Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pearls of Wisdom. Today with Navasit and Suchada and Katharina. And we have a very interesting question about timelines.
Mm,
Please go ahead.
Okay. I have heard the word of timelines, and I was just wondering what is the word timelines refers to, and does it have the meaning like dimensions?
Okay. A timeline has something to do with our consciousness level. Um, everybody is experience life a little bit different. So there are personal timelines. It's in a way like there are groups together. So every person in a way we can say has a timeline because this is kind of the energy frequency where we walk on. Um, it is not really directly related to dimensions, but timelines can move into different dimensions. But the timeline, we can say we have a timeline for our own person, but there is also more or less a timeline for our family. But it is very difficult that the timeline of the family when, for example, everybody grows up and leave the house, like the brothers and the sisters, they move on their own timeline. But if you incarnate here, you incarnate first on that family timeline till you have a certain age to be adult when you move away from the timeline of the family. But the dimension, this is something else again. The consciousness level brings you on a timeline. Say, for example, you are on a consciousness level, I just say now a number, it doesn't matter what it is, like 100. And that timeline of 100 will automatically connect you with all the others on the number 100. But if you are on a timeline of 50, you are connected with others on the timeline of 50 or 200 or whatever. Just to use that as a metaphor. So when you are on a certain timeline and you will meet other people on the same level of timeline. You cannot, for example, meet somebody, then that's the same with consciousness level. When you are on a timeline of 20 and the other person is on a timeline of 50, then you have nothing really in common. You might see a person like that maybe somewhere, but you won't have an affinity to that person. You don't connect to it. So
Mm,
when you are on your personal timeline, at whatever consciousness level you move on your timeline, you will meet others on a similar timeline level of consciousness. That's where you have an affinity to meet people. And if you move forward into something else, like for example, again, when I said the family sample, like when the children grow up and they go into different directions, like maybe one become a teacher, another become a gardener, another study mathematics or whatever, we automatically move our consciousness level, we move our focus, and with our focus, we move our timeline. And the gardener will probably meet a lot more gardeners, the teacher will meet teachers, the mathematicians, mathematicians. And then this is then the connection that we have.
mm. So when you mention the family timelines, um, people will die, and you said they will move from the family timeline. So the family timeline will at the end not exist.
No, that shifts also. But
Mm.
the moment when you are incarnated,
Mm.
you need to jump on a timeline. You need to jump into something. As we know from the astrology chart, we choose curriculum for this life. So
Mm.
we look at the different family timelines because when you have a family like a husband and a wife, they are generally on the same timeline or is very similar one. Otherwise, they would not be so close together and not be able to have children. So we jump on that timeline with the parents, and we are on this timeline maybe depending on how rebellious you are, or how different you are from your parents, how early you want to leave, or how early you start to develop interests outside of the family. But in the beginning, you are kind of carried on the timeline of the family till you go on your individual. And once you get married and you are together with a partner and having a child, that child jumps on your timeline as a start base for his or her life.
Is it the same thing as the frequency?
Yes. You have to see that everything is frequency, everything is energy. The timeline is connected with your consciousness level, and which is again a frequency. So it depends when you are on a timeline. For example, when you're on a timeline for a family that is maybe not very spiritually evolved, and you come in as a star seed and you have the job, you take in that job more or less for this lifetime, that you will help people to wake up. So you will probably very early already not feel very, very comfortable in your home, because you have a very different consciousness level than your parents. But still, you know, if you want to put in light seeds, you have to send them in the darkness. It doesn't matter, you know, if all these star seeds would all be born in the same place, it wouldn't make sense, you know. That's why we are in different places. And many are, I say most of us, especially the older ones, are probably born into families with a very different consciousness than they have. And they have to kind of struggle more or less on that timeline, on that frequency, on that energy that is not theirs, to finally find out and leave to live their own lives.
Okay, I have another question. So we were born with our own timeline, which at the beginning we will sink into the family timelines.
Yes.
We have like the society, the country,
yes.
the world, and the universe.
Yes.
Do we need to, you know, sink into, you know, like the social timeline or country timeline or universe timeline?
Well, we are definitely part of it. There is everybody in a certain country, in a certain village, whatever, is affected from the energy of the village, of the environment, of the country. Already through speaking a certain language, you're connected with people. You have an option to understand. Like somebody come in and does not speak your language. It's very difficult to even make a living with that kind of people. This is a different timeline, it's a different energy. There are people who can adapt and can learn, and there are many people who go from places to places, but most people, they go like tourists. They don't really jump on that timeline and don't really learn so much either. They just use it for an experience. But still, that experience will help to expand their consciousness because they've seen something else. Considering people who are born in the same place, have worked in the same place, have family in the same place, die in the same place, and have not been much away, they don't have so much chance to learn more, to see more, to expand their consciousness. And that was happening like in older times still, but now people have much more opportunity to travel, to experience more.
So it means that whenever I meet the new people, it means that I'm going to meet the new timeline, their timeline, his timeline, and then I can learn more experience and then grow my consciousness, right?
You don't have to jump on that timeline. You won't be on that timeline. You maybe meet them for a couple hours or for a couple days. You learn from them. You expand your experience through other people's eyes. So if you have a discussion like what we have a discussion right now, you're not jumping on my timeline, and I'm not jumping on yours, but from my consciousness, from my timeline where I am, I give you some information, and you can process this information, and depending on what sticks with you, you move on maybe on your timeline, and timelines are connected to consciousness level again. It can help you to catapult you into a higher consciousness level, and this will also enhance your timeline. You kind of move a little bit on a different timeline.
And that's this timeline has speed involved.
Again, everything is frequency. Now, you know that a lower consciousness or a slower consciousness is more heavy, more dense, has to do with speed is slower. And the higher your consciousness goes, that is also speeding up, because light has a faster speed than a slow wave. You know, you can hear it from tones. Like low tones have what do you call it, a longer wavelength, and the higher the tone is, the shorter the wavelength is. So yes, the timeline, your timeline has a certain speed or has a certain frequency that is practically all the same.
So for this speed, I want to clarify a little bit. Does it mean like how we understand things? So the speed means that how fast we understand the learning, the lesson, what comes in.
You can definitely say that, for example, clever kids who understand faster and learn faster, they are on, because they're on a higher timeline, on a timeline with more speed. So they also, everything speed up faster. People have a very long time to understand or to move on, to do something. You can see that their timeline is slower, their frequency is slower, so they need more time. But I want to say very clearly that has nothing to do with good and bad or with better and worse. Some people, that is just their way of their temperament, you know, that's how they are. They make things slower, but that does not mean that they are spiritually less evolved.
So it's like we will have our own rhythm.
Yes, absolutely. And I know people who actually are kind of very slow, but they're very wise. They have a lot of experience, but they just experience in a different way. As you know, from again, let's look at astrology. Let's look at the difference between the planets. If you have somebody with Neptune or Uranus or very strongly connected with the earth signs or fire signs, they are also, the speed of these people is different.
Yes, yes.
But that is, again, not one is better and the other one is worse. It's always the thing that complement each other and comes together to a whole.
Does a person have more than one timeline?
We can say we have many, many timelines, but we can be only on one in one time. So you might go forth and back on different timelines, but you're always, the moment where you are on one timeline. And this is the probability of your timeline. Say, for example, this is your timeline, but then somebody else comes in your life and suddenly you go off instead of the timeline, you go here. And then suddenly your timeline shifts up here. But then somebody else comes and you go down, then the speed is down a bit. So your timeline is not always the same.
Mm.
It is shifting according to your personal energy. And you all know you have good days and not so good days. You have days where you're very fast and motivated, and days that you're more laying low. And this is also fluctuating the timeline. But in general, once we have incarnated, we have a major timeline, we can say, that we've been talking already, say here you're born and here you're gonna die. So this is your timeline that you have, but we are usually not straight on the timeline. We're going a little bit like this. And again, when you're too far away from your timeline, from the life goal, you get sick. And when you get sick, this is always kind of an indication that you're too far away from where your really energy flows, the energy that you've chosen for this life. And when you go too far away that you cannot come back anymore, then some people, they check out, what we call they die.
Mm.
Mhm.
So when you said we shift from, like timeline up and down, does it shift because we make a choice?
Yes, absolutely. Because our life is just one choice after the other. And I mean, they're very small choices, like should I put on this clothes, or should I drink a coffee or a tea? I mean, we constantly make choices. And the sum of this energy of our choices is connected to our consciousness level and our timeline.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So you can also see that, again, groups have also timelines, that we are in a certain group, that we are like, this is a bigger, it's like, you can say the personal timeline is a very small soil, a very small road. And the bigger timeline is like a normal road. And the like, say, for example, the timeline of the whole planet Earth might be a highway.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that is alive has a timeline.
Mm.
So the universe has its own timeline. We are part of it.
Yes, absolutely. Now, when you look at the Earth, you can see the cycles. We talk about cycles and not so much timelines. Like, for example, we have that 25,920-year cycle of the big solar year, where we move around the central sun of Alcyon. And in this time, this is a cycle. We move through different places around that solar center, and each of these areas have a different energy. So when we move through all these energy frequencies, everything on the planet is in a certain frequency, up and down, like we have a frequency band that you cannot go out of. And each time we return to the same point and complete the cycle, what is actually happening now, there is a jump on the next spiral. So you can see that a circle, when I do a circle, it takes time for me from going from 0 point around till I'm there again. And that time, like, here is the 0 point. When I come back here, because the time has moved. So I come into a new cycle, and this is not exactly on the same line anymore that I was before. So every time we move into a new energy field, something is happening. And when we look at the great solar year, we know that every time that this solar year happened in this closest 26,000 years, we have seen major catastrophes have happened on the earth, because the consciousness level of the inhabitants of the earth has not been ready yet to jump on the next timeline. And in this time, I said that before, in 1986, the consciousness level of humanity has shifted to a point that it was possible that the earth would not have been destroyed, but what is living on the earth mostly would have been destroyed. And we passed that already for 10 years and are in the shift, and that is what is happening. All this stuff that is happening now has to do with moving everything out of the system that does not belong in the new timeline. But that it can be eradicated and be moved away, it has to come to the surface. And a lot of beings and people who are not on the same frequency as our timeline, they have to what we call die. They have to leave their physical earth body, which resonates with the Schumann frequency, you know, the frequency of the earth. They do not resonate with that frequency, and they have to move on, and that means they have to leave the body and move somewhere else. That means they don't, we say they die, but death is also a big misunderstanding, because we just leave that vessel that does not serve us anymore. And those with a low frequency have to leave, and because they are not aligned to the new timeline of the earth. They cannot stay here.
And how do we sync our timeline with the earth timeline, that we don't die? I mean, you don't die before the proper time.
You know, one thing that is very important that most people forgotten is that we are part of nature, part of earth. And most people don't have absolutely no connection with earth anymore. I mean, they eat already food that is processed, that it has nothing to do with nature anymore. So we have to go back to nature. We have to understand that only the frequency of the planet that give us our body can heal us. And one step is to start with that is, like, for example, to go into nature, to stand at least barefoot on a piece of soil every day to recharge your batteries. Remember, you are an electromagnetic being. If you're wearing shoes all the time with a rubber sole, you cannot regenerate. You need the energy exchange with the earth. And you need to start to eat more natural things, and to find out, to buy some food which is not poisoned, which is very difficult today, because, you know, the air, the water, everything is poisoned. But the moment when this cleanup happen, we will be able to regenerate the earth very fast, because then when these negative energies that are from a lower timeline, like if our timeline is here, and there are still those who try to pull it down, but they cannot. They will, when they have a certain distance from the real timeline, they just are gone. And as soon as this is over, and this negative energy that tries to pull down is gone, then the earth and humanity and everything what is living here will regenerate very fast, because we all are now on a timeline that is going into a more positive, higher consciousness.
And does praying or setting intention is another way to sync with the earth timeline?
Paying attention, 100% yes, but be very, very careful with the praying thing. You know, the new paradigm and the new and higher timeline that we move up again, you know, we spiral down in a very low point. Now we are spiraling up again. So we have to let go of the habits that do not serve us anymore. So one of the very first things in the new timeline is that we stop to worship deities outside of ourselves. Remember, we talked about praying is begging. You don't need to ask anybody outside of you, an other god or goddess or whatever it is, to help you to do things for you. You have to reach your own personal higher self, that part of divine energy which lives within you, that makes you alive. That is God. So that is God in everybody, God in you, God in me. So I don't pray to you. You don't pray to me. But when you go into a temple or a church or whatever, you go to your knees and you pray to some kind of God. In the end, that divine energy is yourself, and what you do, you go into your knees and you pray to yourself once you understand what you're doing. So the first thing is to really make that timeline work is take back your power, understand you are a divine being having a human experience, and start to create, co-create life in a positive way for you. And then automatically those around you will be influenced by your positive creation. So yes, we influence our timeline. The faster we start to reconnect with our divine within, the faster we move forward on the timeline. The more easy life gets, the more help we get, because we are in the right energy, in the right paradigm, and automatically attract what we need.
And while we take this soul journey or soul experience, do we need to constantly checking if we are on the right timeline, or do we need to aware of this timeline topic?
You don't. It's a very, very easy way to see if you're on the right timeline. When you feel good and when you're healthy, then you're on the right timeline. Then you don't have to think about it much. The moment you get sick, the moment things happen in your life that you don't want to happen, you have to reconsider your choices, and you have to look at what might not have been in harmony, and then you correct it, and then it will come back to your timeline. On the other hand, there is a lot of going on in the moment, a lot of suffering everywhere, and maybe you have also to look at how much did you agree to help within this, and take on maybe some part of suffering for others to help. But in general, I think where we are right now, this cleansing that is happening, it will cause us suffering, because we lose people we love, and we thought we are very much connected, and they go away from us, which is very, very difficult to look at. But on the other hand, we have to be very clear also that no soul ever is being lost. They are just on a different timeline that we might not see anymore. But at the end, they are also divine being having a human experience. And I think, again, the best to compare that is like, some young souls are maybe still in kindergarten, and some others are in high school, and some others are in university. Like a child in first grade, for example, and a child in sixth grade, they don't have very much in common. And I mean, just in a physical way, just look at their bodies. And in a way, this is also in the different timelines. There are so many different souls here with more or less experience. And those who have more experience, like older souls who have been on that timeline for a long time, like the last 26,000 years, they are really ready to move on. but there may be souls, they just come in just maybe a couple hundred years ago, or just a short time here. They had just few incarnations here on the earth. Even if the souls are, in a way we can say, the divine, there's no age, but it matters about experience. So they are not ready yet to move on. So they will be reincarnating on a planet that is in this 3D dimension as where we're moving out now. But they have not enough. They need to go there, back there, to have that experience again. So it's generally, I think it's a feeling. You feel if it's right or not. It's a kind of, yeah, I don't know what else to say. Like, yes, I even, again, you know, when you look back, there are many mistakes. So we need to get that experience that we didn't have before.
So we don't have to, you know, learn about the timeline or concern about the timeline. We just live our life and reconnect with nature and reconnect with our inner and go on and live and experience.
Yes. As long as you're connected with yourself, like, you know, in the morning, for example, when you wake up, when you say something like that, I surrender to the divine, this within. You can also say to God or Goddess within and ask her or him to guide me, to protect me, to inspire me today. Then you give permission to the higher self, to the divine connection to be with you, and then you are automatically on the right timeline. Then you cannot do anything wrong. Then you have your conscience that tell you exactly when you feel good about something or bad about something, where you are. And whenever you feel stress and wherever you feel tension, really one of the best thing is like to stick your feet. Also, you can put it in water. That helps me the most. When I just go into water. And or right now it's with so much rain, everything is more or less a little bit swampy. So if you walk on the swampy earth, you really kind of feel the clay going between your toes, and in a way you kind of sink into the earth, which gives a very good feeling, a feeling of connectedness, a feeling also that I can really feel the energy of the earth.
Yes.
And when you live in a high-rise building or you're mostly indoor, it is really, really important that you take time to go outside at least once a day.
I think that's all the questions.
Okay, very good. So thank you very much. These were good questions. Thank you everybody for listening. And if you have questions, you know how to reach me. So we see you next week. Thank you. Give us a thumbs up and share with your friends. Bye bye, everybody. See you next time.